Hi, everybody. Welcome back to week 8 of Consumer Market Research. This week, we're going to talk about telephone surveys and then we're going to talk about online surveys. Uh, Again, I'd like to reiterate the difference between self-administered surveys and interviewer-administered surveys because I think that that's a fundamental difference. Now, obviously, a telephone survey is interviewer-administered and an online survey is self-administered. So in a way, you could group online surveys with the self-administered paper and pencil survey we talked about last week, and you could group telephone with the in-person interview. And we've found that if when we do a hybrid methodology, mixing the two, that again you want to keep the interviewer-administered interviews together, or you go one way or the other, or else make it a self-administered interview. So let's talk about telephone. And one of the things I don't like about the book's presentation is, even though it was republished in 2013, it seems a bit dated, because I would say that the telephone interview is still vital, but starting to fall by the wayside, whereas online interviews using panelists is becoming more and more and more common and more viable as these panels get to be more representative and more robust, and you're able to reach different types of consumers. Now, we found in terms of Spanish dominant consumers, for instance, that even though there's a lot of panels out there that claim that they have hundreds of thousands of respondents, when it comes to time to qualifying people, we're not always successful. But generally speaking, online is becoming the way to go. So in terms of telephone, there's a couple of key concepts I want to stress. The first is that going back to our sampling lecture, remember the importance of randomness when you're doing a survey. When you're doing telephone interviews, there's a technique called RDD, or random digit dialing, in which everything is pre-programmed, as described in the book, but the interviewers are equipped with telephone type software that automatically dials numbers in given areas, so you're able to ensure representativeness. You might want to make sure that every one of the states is represented in the proportion that it represents of the total U.S. population. The software does that all for interviewers. And again, this software is called CATI, or CATI as some people pronounce it, computer-aided telephone interviewing, and that's the norm. So telephone interviewing eliminates any kind of geographic restrictions. You can call people all over the country, you can call people all over the world, you can devise sampling plans to ensure representativeness. You can put together pretty sophisticated skip patterns when you're doing the programming. In other words, a skip pattern is, again, let's say that I ask you, do you shop at Walmart? And if your answer is yes, I'm going to ask you a series of Walmart questions, and if your answer is no, I'm going to ask you a different set of questions. And there could be multiple iterations. If you buy chicken at Walmart, you might get asked these questions, whereas if you buy something else at Walmart, you might go down another path. Telephone interviewing is great because everything is programmed in this CATI software, so it makes it a lot easier for interviewers. Imagine an interviewer using a paper and pencil format trying to, skip to page 6 and skip to page 8. It gets very, very complicated. What the book does not mention is the importance of a growing area, and that's calling people on their cell phones. And it is possible to obtain a list of cell phone numbers, just like it's possible to obtain a list of people with landlines. And again, as we move into an era where fewer and few people have landlines, it's becoming more and more important to be able to reach people that are only on their cell phones. Otherwise, your sample is biased, because anybody that only has a cell phone, anybody that does not have a landline, is not going to be represented from a sample that, let's say, draws on the white pages from the phone book or something like that. Okay, so there's a downside to cell phone interviewing, and that's, people are answering their cell phones. They might be driving and attempt to do the interview. They might be distracted, and there might be limits to how long the survey can be. So again, typical is a hybrid approach where if you're doing telephone, a certain proportion of your interviews might be people on cell phone numbers, people derived from a list of cell phone users, and then part of your sample would be people on a landline. The book said the typical telephone interview is about, I think it says 10 minutes max. Again, we have done 40-minute interviews. That's very long, but we've done longer interviews using the telephone. Again, the trick is to pay an incentive, and like any kind of survey, you do want to have kind of a lie detector in there. If everybody's answering 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, you want to throw them out, or if they answer the survey too quickly in a computer-based interview, then you want to throw them out. So let's talk about panel interviews. This is a growing field. More and more companies are putting together panels of respondents. It's called opt-in, people that want to participate in market research. It's almost like an airline with frequent flyer points. They get rewards for participating in surveys. So you run the risk that these folks are, professional respondents, so to speak. But by the same token, it is becoming the norm, and the book alludes to some research showing that online interviews are valid, that they tend to yield the same results as a telephone interview. So that's becoming the future, and again, it allows you to do things that you can't do with a telephone interview. It allows you to show visuals. It's great for testing advertisement. It's great for testing websites and things like that. You can basically show a commercial. You can show anything that can be shown in an online environment. It's great because you can put a lot of work into the design of the questionnaire. So you can do conjoint analysis and other kinds of surveys that are kind of complicated. Those that are evaluating product attributes, which of the following combinations of product descriptions is most appealing to you. It's all very easily done on an online interview. And it has many, many advantages. From my perspective as a research supplier, the most important is they are very, very economical to do, based on a comparison with any other kind of methodology. You can blast out a link to an online survey to a lot of people. It takes, all you got to do is hit the send button, and you get a pretty substantial response within 24 hours. Since it's all programmed, it's very important to test the survey to make sure it's working the way that you want it to. It's very typical to kind of send out a bunch of test questions to get some test responses, and then to look at the results and just make sure that everything looks hunky-dory, that everything looks good.